Looks like you'll be driving home for Christmas this year, as rail workers have just announced a new wave of strikes for December. The RMT union will strike on 13th and 14th and the 16th and 17th of December, then again in January. The General Secretary, Mick Lynch, says workers want a good deal on security, pay and conditions. Atul, it does seem to me sometimes, and to some of our viewers, that Mick Lynch is holding the country a little bit to ransom with his demands.
Well, I think people can generally understand that with the cost of living, inflation, workers will do what they can to boost their wages. Now, on the specific instance of this range of strikes, it's very hard to understand, to know the detail of what's happening in those negotiations, because normally unions will negotiate with employers. Here it's different because the government's involved. So what Mick Lynch was saying, there was a deal, it was coming. They thought there was going to be no need for strikes. The rail employers were lined up, and then with less than an hour to go, mysteriously the deal gets pulled, and now Mick Lynch has got to go see the new Secretary of State for Transport. And it smells a little bit like maybe there's a new Secretary of State, he wants a bit of publicity, and so everything's been derailed a bit. So that one doesn't quite know the detail of what's happening in those negotiations.
Yes, it does seem a little bit opaque at the moment. It's hard to know how close they've got to a settlement, whether there is a settlement on the table that Mick Lynch is simply refusing, not good enough for him, or whether it's a little bit more complicated than that. Now, I'm asking whether, Jacqueline, whether this is all a bit self-defeating. We saw over the course of the pandemic that the government pumped huge amounts of taxpayers' money into the rail industry to keep it afloat. All of this strike action is costing the industry more and more money, apparently 250 million, perhaps, the strikes so far. Could it be that they're actually paving the way for more redundancies and closures to come? Because there simply isn't the money.
Well, I think it's extremely disappointing, and I think it's actually quite avoidable. In my former life, before even going into the European Parliament, I spent 13 years as a trade union negotiator, 3 of those with the Transport and General Workers Union, and then 10 with a union that we formed a number of years later.
Gosh, you must have seen some scenes.
I've seen some scenes. I have been on the picket line. I've taken them out to strike. So I'm not sitting here as somebody who's anti-trade union. But trade unions also have a responsibility. And I think the point that you picked up on, during the 2 years during COVID, the taxpayer actually put in about £17 billion to keep the railways afloat, because obviously we needed them to be in place. Like the public sector, we spent billions to make sure once we came out of COVID that obviously we had a railway left. In addition to that, I've been commuting on Avanti, which was Virgin, for about 20 years, and I chat to the staff. And what I'm a bit surprised about, well, I was taken aback, actually, talking to the staff fairly recently. I said, well, where are you up to with this? What exactly is going on? I said, I know there's the 8%, but what are the other issues involved in this negotiation on terms and conditions? There is an issue about taking an early pension. There was a structure that they had in place that I know that they want to change. But I did say to him also, the particular person I was talking about, and others, I said, so how much do you get a day for strike pay? And this is RMT, I don't know about the other unions. And he said, we haven't had any strike pay. So I said, well, what do you mean? I said, when you go out on strike, your trade union normally gives you strike pay. I said, it's not necessarily going to be the equivalent of what you would earn in a day. It might be 25 quid. It could be more than that. And they have not received 1 day's pay for strike pay, nothing towards it. So now we're looking at going into 21 days by the time we add up December and January, which isn't just 3 weeks disruption. It's gone on over a period of time, because obviously railways don't, start the next day if you've actually taken industrial action. And the other question I want to know is, was the deal ever set? I said, have you ever been balloted on the deal that's on the table? And he said, well, no, we get